As a child, we all long for a hero. As a society as a whole, we search for that leader that can be our hero. But as we mature and as we grow, it dawned on us that the hero is inside every one of us. And in the world of social media, we all start at zero. And slowly we search deep within ourselves to find who we are. And we have that moment of truth where we embrace that the hero that we've been searching for has been there all along. It is living deep inside of every one of us. And we start embracing that journey and we become that hero that we search for.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to episode 90 of Zero to Hero presented by J29 Creative Group. I am so pumped to have our next guest on. You have probably seen him receiving some splashes, avoiding some splashes. He is the author of Small Ball, Big Results. He's also a broadcaster for Bally Sports Network and the host of the pre and post game show for the Kansas City Royals. His name is Joel Goldberg. He's also the founder and owner of Joel Goldberg Media. So let's go ahead and bring him in. Joel, how are you this morning?
Gino, how are you? Thanks for the intro. Very, very cool stuff there.
Oh, I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. Nothing like rounding the bases. Obviously, forgot to mention that you're also the host of an amazing podcast where you're bringing in fantastic guests and talking to them. I just recently listened to your latest one with Tommy, the collegiate referee, and he has got some amazing stuff that he was saying, and the digital detox that he is on is, man, what a tough undertaking in 2023. So for those of you that maybe haven't seen that episode with Tommy on Rounding the Bases, he's actually turning off his phone. Started earlier this month, right, for a full year, and he's not going to the wilderness or anything like that. He's living his life. He's doing it, but he turned off his phone. So I commend him for that. That's incredible.
Yeah, I am envious and also completely realistic to say that there's no chance I could do
that. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But yeah, what an incredible thing to undertake. Yeah. So Joel, let's talk about you, man. I mean, I think probably the lesser known thing about you is that you run this company outside of everything that you do with the Royals, where you're truly making an impact on company cultures here locally and across the nation. So what are you guys doing over there at Joel Goldberg Media?
Just a lot of everything. It all sort of happened accidentally about 7 years ago with a buddy of mine asking me, hey, what are you up to in the off season anyway? That was what everybody always asked. Like, what do? You disappear for 6 months. And I'm like, well, occasional announce a Mavericks hockey game or maybe a small college basketball, something, not much. And a lot of family time. And I said, I'm going to speak to some group next week, blah, blah, blah. And he said, you do that a lot? And I said, not really. And he said, you could start a business and make a business out of it. I'd never really lived in what I call the real world. I mean, I think that my job, we work as hard as everybody else on the TV side, but it's sort of fantasy land. It's everything people would think and then a lot more, but it's its own sort of world. And so when I heard that, I thought, boy, I've never really, at least since I arrived in Kansas City in 2008, and I'm not a salaried employee. So I've got the time to do whatever I want with it. And I thought that's interesting. Well, what am I going to do with it? And long story short, it turned into podcasting, some blogging along the ways, newsletter, on and on. And then the big thing is the speaking business and writing the book. So there's never a slow day with it. It's really during baseball season a matter of saying, okay, what can I do today? What do I want to do today? And what can wait, because there are only so many hours in the day. But I mean, I'll say that if people locally know me for the baseball, if they watch, I don't assume that they do. Most people don't know that I'm doing that. And I love it. I mean, I love that as much, equally as much as I do the baseball. That's not something that I thought, honestly, Gino. I thought, yeah, this could be a fun little side hustle. I'm comfortable speaking, and I had to learn a lot too, but I don't know that I thought that I would love it as much in different ways, but equally as much as I do the baseball.
Yeah, no, it's something that I think a lot of us are envious of, right? And we kind of fantasize it in our own world, right? You get to travel around with the Royals,
Yeah.
right? And you're hanging out with the players, and you're getting splashed by Salvi, right? And witnessing World Series and amazing things, right? But there is I'm sure there's an incredible amount of work that goes into that, and then the time, away from home as well, right? I mean, these guys have a tedious schedule during the year, 162 games, half of them they're gone for, right?
Yeah,
So
that's right. I,
yeah,
I, I think that what I tell people, and it's really hard. I think it's hard to grasp this. I mean, growing up, this is all I wanted to do, the television sports thing. I didn't know it would look like this because when I was growing up, which was a long time ago now, there weren't pregame and postgame shows. There weren't sideline reporters or in-game reporters. Barely any of that existed. Now every network, every sport has all of that. And so it's a pretty normal thing. And who knows, 20, 30 years from now, it'll be something different again. But, I got into sports. I've been on TV in some form or another now for 29 years. And when I got to Kansas City, I found the sweet spot. But one of the challenges with it was I'd never worked a full baseball schedule. I'd come from St. Louis where I shared responsibilities with a couple of other guys and we did other things as well. So, you might come back from a road trip and then you might get 3 or 4 days off. You might come in the winter and work on some projects. And here it's 6 months on, it's 6 months off. And, it might be 18 days in a row, 19 days in a row. I remember being completely overwhelmed by the third week of April, my first year here. And now it varies by year. I know I hit the wall early, say in 2016, because we had 1 month off less, and that was all worth it, of course, with the World Championship. But this year, like I've learned how to do this. This year, I don't really know that I hit the wall until recently this month. It's always going to happen because there's no chance to recharge. The only chance you get to recharge is the All-Star break for 4 days. But you might get lucky every now and then with 2 days off if there's a quirk in the schedule, which we did have at one point this year, or maybe if a streaming service picked up the game and bumped us, where you can get a couple days off, which we had recently. So I think the only two massive challenges that I think anyone would still sign up for, but that are really, truly difficult is just the pace of all of that and just the time away from family. And I say to people all the time that in my business, certainly the baseball business where it's every day, you either, if you have a family, you either figure it out, you either move on, or you move on from your relationship. And I've been lucky enough and not easy, that my family has adapted to this. My wife and kids, they know no other life. I know no other life. And for 6 months, I'm kind of in and out. And for the other 6 months, I'm here. The only other thing I would say is that, and this is something that really I think is hard. I think it would be hard for people to grasp. It would have been harder for me to grasp before I did this, is that the perspective on sports becomes different when you're as deep into it as I am.
yeah,
As deep into it as my colleagues are, certainly, Rex and Ryan and Monty and all those guys, and probably around the country too, the others, is that you become less a fan of the specific games or even the specific players at times. It becomes work. It's the best work in the world, but I think to be able to survive a long baseball season, you have to get a little bit less emotional about it. And so I love going to work every single day. But when people say to me, man, how do you do this when it's one of the worst records or the worst record ever, or they're so far in last place? Like, you hear people, well, who cares anymore? I'm like, well, somebody always cares, for one. Two, perspective here, I'm getting paid to talk about baseball. Life is just fine. But part of what enables you to have that longevity and that energy is to not let the losses, or anything for that matter that goes on, affect you. You want to ride the wave with the wins because they're so much fun. So I'm not emotional like a sports fan is supposed to be. This is supposed to be an irrational activity for people, maybe as an escape. And to me, it's just work, but it's the best work. So I just don't see sports the way that I did growing up. It's just a different lens and a different perspective, but an equal passion.
Oh, I'm glad that you brought that up. I think a lot of people do fantasize it, right? That's part of the fantasy is it's going to be so amazing, right? And it's it's not really work because I love it, right? But I think that's why myself included, I was when I started looking into a sports career, I was like, man, I want to keep that something that I love, right? I almost don't want to get into it as much as I do. So I appreciate you saying that. And I could definitely see how that would be difficult. One thing I want to ask you about, obviously, you're talking, especially when the Royals were good, right? We were winning world championships. You were talking in front of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people through a camera, right? When you go into these corporate environments, I'm sure you're dealing with some big crowds that are there, not as big, but all those eyeballs are looking directly at you. What's that difference been like for you? Has there been a difference? Do you feel different on TV versus in a corporate environment?
Yeah, I mean, the only time to me that there was a complete similarity to it was when everybody was doing virtual speaking. And, people certainly in my world, in the speaking world, were a lot of people were like, oh my gosh, this is so hard. I'm suddenly not on stage anymore. I can't read body language. I can't feel that energy. And I went through that too. And then I thought, wait a minute, I do this every single night. Like, I have no idea if we're doing a post game show for a game that ended late out west and it's 1 a.m, and I know there are less people watching, and you're in last place, and there could be I guess a danger of saying, well, I mean, is anybody even watching? But you don't know. And over time, you start to learn that, like I said before, somebody's always watching. But also, Gino, that somebody might be laying in a hospital bed, that somebody may be overseas in the middle of the night serving our nation, in the Middle East. And they're not tuning in for me to be all down. They're not tuning in. And I got no problem saying the team's not playing well. I did that last night, very uninspired, very flat right now. Just tell it like it is. And obviously we've got a hometown slant. That's part of being on the broadcast, but I want to make sure that I have the energy, even if there aren't positive things going on. I can't paint the 6-game losing streak in a great light. I could certainly highlight some positive things that are going on, but I think that in terms of similarities and differences, the biggest difference is that when you're on stage, you see every bit of the reaction, and you can have the pulse of the room every step of the way, and so it's a little bit, I think, more of a live wire act, I guess, when you're on TV, of just trusting that what you're doing is good enough. And if at any given moment it's not good enough, you just move on. And I mean, I think that's part of doing 150, 160 games a summer over and over again, is that doubt of, am I good enough at this? Do people like me? And all of that. You don't think about that stuff anymore. You just go and do it and trust the content and our people. But on stage, it's me and only me. I mean, you might have a audio visual crew that you just met, and you got to hope that they're doing their thing right. And if they do, they do. And if they don't, you pick up the pieces as you would on live television when there are technical difficulties. But there's instant feedback, and that's one of the very intoxicating things about the speaking. I have a decent knowledge and just a genuine belief that when I'm on TV, I'm hopefully making people's lives a little better if they're trying to get a diversion from life or work or whatever. And I think it's important to have that energy and throw in a little bit of humor and try to give people a peek behind the scenes when you can. But again, you don't know. In person, you see the reactions, you may see the laughter, you may see the tears. I do try to make it, very emotional at times. And then you hear from people right away. Hey, this moved me to do that. Oh, I can't wait to do this. Or you hear from people later on. So there's more instant gratification on the speaking, but there's a high to both of them, no question about it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and you do a fantastic job. I haven't seen you
Thank
speak
you.
in person, but even wins or losses, right? I mean, one of the favorite parts I think of watching Royals baseball is seeing you put on those fantastic interviews at the end of the game. Always love a win, right? More than a
Yeah.
loss. Love to see that bucket coming for you and you getting out of the way. But yeah, no, there's absolutely, especially with Kansas City sports, there's always going to be somebody that's watching. I mean, I was going out to Kaufman in the 90s when we were losing 100 games a year religiously. I mean, we were we were there and watching it and loving it regardless. But yeah, no, into the public speaking a little bit more. I don't want to have you give away too many tips, but I love that your focus is really on those small things that add up, right? And one of my big philosophies in life is 1% better every day, right? Which is focusing on just improving those small things and those things adding up throughout the year, right? So without giving away all the tips and the tricks, what are some of those small things that, maybe if there's a smaller entrepreneur that's watching, right, that doesn't have the means to bring in a big speaker or something along those lines, maybe we can give them a tip to help kind of improve the culture around their own organization.
Well, I think, and the reason why I went this route, and the title of the speech, there's never really one same speech. I have so much content between what goes on in the baseball world. I mean, shoot, the other day we were lucky enough that Garth Brooks was in town promoting some stuff and ends up coming on our pregame show, and he says something right away about something along the lines of we're on this planet to help each other, and I can't do that when I'm off by myself. So I want to be around others. And as I'm hearing that, I'm thinking, I want to pull that clip and share it with a speaking audience, because you don't have to be Garth Brooks. You don't have to be Salvador Perez. You don't have to be the local broadcaster. Yes, we have a bigger platform, but sort of like what I said about even if one person is watching, we all have the ability to make an impact in someone's life every single day. So it's a lot of that. And I do believe that when you get the culture right, or when you're getting the people part right, you have a better chance of getting the culture right. And I knew when I started this that it was never going to be a baseball talk. If someone wants to hire me to come and do some big baseball thing, I'm happy to do that. I did that for years with Rotary clubs and state of the team and here's what's going on. And sometimes that comes up in Q&A. But I thought early on when I first called it Building a Championship Culture, and then I changed it to Small Ball, Big Results, which is the name of my book, that we all need to play small ball in whatever profession. And so I wanted to be able to do a speech about culture and make it a big umbrella and find out from that group, whether it's a company or an association or a group of prospects that a company is bringing in, what are their needs? What are their soft spots? And everybody kind of wants the same thing. Everybody wants to build stronger teams. It's no different than sports. It really isn't. You got to get the people part right. And I'll take good people over superstars that are bad people all the time. I think that's kind of like what we see in sports too, is some of these big markets that shell out all the big bucks and then wonder why they didn't win. Maybe the chemistry wasn't right. But Gino, to me, it all starts with trust. And no one ever taught me how to build trust when I went to journalism school at the University of Wisconsin. That's not a knock on my alma mater. There are very few schools that are teaching how to build trust in relationships. There's some on the psych side, maybe. And that's what I failed with early on in my career. And once I started learning how to connect with the highest level athletes and how to go about things the right way. So trust is everything. It works into every speech that I do. A big one lately has been empathy, really post-pandemic. How do we walk in each other's shoes better? How do we understand each other better? And when you are more empathetic and when you're able to walk in someone else's shoes, understand where they come from, what they're going through, not all their dark secrets. Maybe they share them, maybe they don't. But when you're able to be more empathetic, then you build the trust. When you build the trust, you can do anything with someone. So that's where I start. And the late David Glass, the former owner of the Royals, said, I think in his final ever interview with us a few months before he passed away, he said, you do everything in life through people, whether that's business or baseball. So that message carries. I don't care who you are, what you do, or where you are in the world. That message will always carry.
I love that. That's so powerful. I mean, that's 100% true. No matter how good you are, you're never going to be good at everything, right? So we always are going to need somebody in our corner to help us out throughout the way. So powerful. I'm going to have you here all day. So we got to get into the meat of the show and get into what we need to get into here. I'm going to ask you to put everything aside, okay? I'm going to ask you to put the Royals aside. I'm going to ask you to put the speaking career aside. I'm going to ask you to put being an author aside, okay? But what I am going to ask you is, aside of everything that you do in the world, who is Joel Goldberg? Give us the elevator pitch about you.
I think that I am someone that's passionate about everything that I do. And and I'm authentic. And I know that sounds so simplistic, but I think we all live in a world, especially with all the social media and all that, where, it's tough to know what's real and what's not. And look, I'm in a business that is all about glitz and glamour. And I'm pretty sure everybody that knows me is not gonna, they're not gonna label me as glitz and glamour. Um, some might say, I've got a, I don't know. I mean, I don't think I'm high maintenance or anything like that, but I, I think there are enough people in my world, in my business, and I'm talking TV, but also the speaking side too, that can be successful and not have massive egos. We all have some kind of an ego. We all do. But I just think there is room to be authentic, be yourself, treat people the right way. And so that's who I am. Someone that's to embrace everything that I do. Look, you have good days, you have bad days. There are good games. There are a lot of bad games. There's some where you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know how we're going to talk about this one, but you do, and you do it authentically. And so I think that's it. I just want people to hopefully see that I'm passionate and authentic. And that's, to me, that's the ultimate compliment I get when someone says that.
Yeah, I think you do a great job with that. I mean, I feel like one of the biggest indicators of that, or probably I'm sure you get a lot of people that when they do meet you, they feel like they already know you a little bit.
That's the hope, right? And
Yeah.
and that's not just true with fans. That's true with the players. I mean, the look, and they're all, especially nowadays, where this younger generation is worried about their brand. They generally want to come on more than guys in the past, because as much as it looks like fun and the Salvi Splash and all of that type of stuff, look, it's a lot easier to go back up to the clubhouse and get out of your uniform and shower and go see your family and get something to eat and go home, versus being slowed down by 2 or 3 minutes and getting a bucket dumped on you. But guys are always willing to do it. I mean, the percentage of times that I get no over the years is like 1% or less, and maybe something's going on with the guy. Maybe who knows what. It very rarely happens, and I hope and I'd like to think that has something to do with the authenticity piece, and also just, this kind of goes back, I think, to being authentic, to being what you say you're going to be, to being where you say you're going to be, when you say you're going to be there. I am notorious for being 2 or 3 minutes late unless a show's starting. I'll be ready for sure. But if I ask a guy, or if I say to a guy, hey, can I grab you for 1 minute? And I start to make that 5 minutes, he's not coming back again. So if I tell them one question, if I tell them 1 minute, if I tell them I need them 1 minute, but there's a bunch of other media that may come and it could turn into 5, are you okay with that? I always want them to know what my intentions are, so that they always keep coming back. And so there is an authenticity piece to it, not just with the fans, but with everyone that you deal with. And I think that's something that people can take away from their profession, right? I mean, treat everybody the same way. It is so easy, okay, I'm working with Gino every single day, but I don't work with this guy, so I don't need to worry as much about him. Well, you never know when you will. And so it'd be easy to bash the other team. It'd be easy to bash the umpires. I don't have to live with them all summer long. I'm just going to try to be the same with everybody and try to be fair and try to be honest. And I think that if you do that long enough, you build a track record.
Absolutely, and I think it attracts what you're looking for as well, right? I mean, the more authentic, the more real you are, the more you're putting yourself, your true self, out into the universe, the more you're gonna receive what you're looking for as well. So, big believer in that.
Yeah.
Now, I want to ask you about your social media journey. This is going to be, I think, a little bit of. I'm sure it's been a wild ride. It's been a wild ride for everybody on social media. But you're kind of alluding to that earlier, and how things have become a little bit more fake, right? A little bit more.
Yeah.
I'm going to put out the perception that I want you to have about me, right? So talk a little bit about your social media journey personally, right? I mean, I'm sure with Joel Goldberg Media, when we opened up the Facebook and the Instagram and the YouTube page, right? The 0 followers, that's where we all start. So talk about starting that to where you're at now, but then just kind of overall what your social media journey has been like as well.
It all really started on Twitter. I mean, I was on Facebook first, personal, but I remember when I joined Twitter, and everybody, Twitter was so much fun back then. I know it's called X, but I still call it Twitter, like a
I
lot
do
of
too.
people. And I mean, whatever, who cares, right? But I, that was pretty intoxicating at first, and it really started to build, I think, during the Royals championship runs. And I really tried to make myself accessible. I did this back on Facebook too, until I realized I'm accepting everybody that requests a friendship, and I don't know who anybody is. And so I put a stop to that. But on Twitter, it was like, you know what? I could be available. I live here in town. I'm not just some random person that comes into town for 6 months and then leaves because I've made my paycheck. I've been a part of this community now for 16 years. I want to be accessible. I'm no different than your neighbor. And so I'd start answering questions, and I'd do all of that. And I think it built up a lot. And then it just, it started to become something that it wasn't. And whether that meant that people weren't just asking a question, then they wanted to rip you down for it, or people weren't just asking a question, they wanted to go back and forth and have a full conversation, or maybe strike up a relationship, and get to know you better and all of that. And it's like, wait a minute, I was just trying to be a good guy. And then Twitter got so nasty, and so all of it, that I still use it every day. I still use it as a source for really seeing a lot of good links around baseball and keeping up with articles and updates, and it's still a great place for me for that, if you can eliminate the noise. But I'm not very active on it anymore. I've become much more active on Instagram. It just seems like a healthier and friendlier place to live. The YouTube page, I have not done enough with it as much as I should. We just try to put content out there, and I haven't really grown that as much, but either that will or it won't. But I'm happy to put stuff up there. The LinkedIn, I'm on all the time. I think from a business standpoint, that's very productive. I could do some more with that though. But I think, Gino, to me, the one that has shocked me this year, and I got advice to start doing this, was TikTok. So I'm like, I'm not doing some stupid TikTok dance and some quirky, that's just not me.
Yeah.
And it was pointed out to me that you could build an audience on there and really start to be able to reach people and promote, whether it's podcast or the speaking business on there, and that you can get a lot of traction. And I didn't quite understand it. And they said, just go out there and do something regularly, even if it's baseball to start. And so I started doing that. And they said, make it a goal of trying to get 10,000 followers and take it from there, and on and on. And so I started doing just these little peek behind the scenes, these little stadium tours. And I realized that those peek behind the scenes should be less than a minute, because that's the world we live in. And that's so fascinating to me right now. It's a bit of an indictment, I think, of where we're at. And I'll look, and I had 2 or 3 of these go viral, 200,000, 500,000, 800,000 views, just for giving people a 45-second behind the scenes at Fenway Park. And I'd look at the analytics, and it would say 45 seconds, average view time 23 seconds.
Wow.
All right. I don't know that I like that, but so how creative can we be in 45 seconds? And it has given me the license to kind of go out there and do some creative things that I don't really get to do in the sort of assembly line world that I live in, with doing a show or 2 shows every day on baseball. So that's been a lot of fun. I'm kind of addicted to it right now, and just growing this audience. And then I'll start to, maybe promote some of the podcasts and speaking stuff on there. It's always going to be something new. And, I've got mixed feelings on all of it for social media. I think it's extremely important. It's also extremely dangerous.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right on both sides, right? I think we have to be careful with what we're doing on there, right? And what kind of content we're consuming, right? Which is the other side of it, right? Anybody that posts obviously has a responsibility to post something that is going to improve social media, right, and not take away from it. But as consumers, we also have a responsibility to monitor what we're taking in as well, right? And I think that's the piece that a lot of people miss. I do want to ask you, I wasn't going to ask you any more baseball questions, but I am, because we're talking about social media, and I love what you said there, right, about the attention span. And I think that baseball has had one of the largest impacts from people's attention span decreasing, probably, than any other sport, right? We've seen the pitch clock come in this year, right? They're trying to shorten games. They're trying to make it more exciting and keep that attention longer. Do you think that that's going to be a trend that we stick with in the future, of trying to shorten down these games? Or do you ever see it going back to a place where I hate to say it, but we're back to real baseball, right? Because I think there's some strategy and some different things that go in, when pitchers kind of take their time, right, or a batter steps out, those kind of things. So what are your thoughts on that?
I would argue that we are back to real baseball right now,
Okay,
and then what recent years has been was not real baseball. And
interesting. Okay,
it, I don't know. I mean, like every sport evolves, and so what's real is what's going on at the moment. But I mean, I get your
sure.
point. When you say real baseball, what did I grow up watching? Now I'm a little bit older than you, but I grew up watching a baseball game that had the pace of what the games in 2023 have. So when a lot of the old school people, a lot of the, uh, you know, just the old school baseball fans were were complaining at the start of the season about how ridiculous this was. I do a little thing in some of my speeches about this. I clipped some of the tweets right before opening day or during spring training about how upset Ted Williams must be, and on and on and on. And it's like, it's possible Ted Williams would have been upset about how slow the game had become in the last 10 years.
Interesting.
And guys were stepping out of the box and stepping off the mound in part because they were reviewing all the massive amounts of information and everybody wanted to be perfect. I don't know that anybody was trusting their instincts. Go play the game that you've been playing since you were a kid. And first and foremost, this should be about the fans. If that TikTok little anecdote that I just told you about 23 seconds is true, like I had a buddy of mine that said to me before the season started, but this pitch clock thing and these new rules, my mom hates them. I said, how old's your mom? And he said, 80. And I said, all due respect to your mom, she knows more about baseball than most people. But this game's not about her anymore. It doesn't mean we don't want her involved. If I can't get my kids and that generation interested, baseball's gonna decrease in interest, and it's eventually gonna go away and become extinct, or it's just gonna be a side sport. Like boxing or horse racing or something like that, which was once thought of as big as anything in the States. So you have to evolve. How come all the other sports can evolve and make all of their changes, but baseball for some reason is immune to change? And I think right now these games, they're more watchable. Attendance is up this year around baseball. Game times are down 25 minutes, and I there's more change coming. We'll see what happens with automated strike zone, robot umpires, and all of it. Like when instant replay started, it'll all come with problems at first. It'll all come with issues. I think for the most part, this pitch clock thing has been smooth. You don't see violations every day like you did at the start. Everybody, players, umpires, even fans have adjusted to what this feels like and looks like. I will just say that the pace, even if it's just 25 minutes, I feel like if I look up or I go visit with someone, and I don't do that as much anymore at the stadiums, I miss an inning and I'm playing catch up for the next 3 or 4 innings. And so there's just a nice rhythm to it. I love it.
That is an interesting perspective, one that I did not expect you to have. So I appreciate you sharing that for
I'm an old school guy. I feel like I'm watching. I don't, I'm accused, as many of my colleagues are, of, oh, you just want to go home earlier. Of course I do. I mean, who doesn't want to leave work earlier, even if you have the greatest job in the world?
Right.
But they're nice. So I'm like, oh my gosh, this game really feels like it's dragging. And I look, and the game time's 240. Like in the past, games that were dragging were 3.5, 340, 345. I think the only people that should really be upset about this is the vendors.
Yeah, sure. And that I could definitely see them being the biggest ones that are upset about it. Yeah, I think I was actually in attendance for, I think, what was the longest game of baseball ever at Kauffman Stadium, late 90s. I think we were playing the Cardinals. It was like 5 hours, I want to say 5.5, somewhere in there. It was a long day. I mean, it was almost a full work day at the baseball stadium for sure. But yeah, no, you're 100% right. I mean, obviously, if we can't get kids involved, right, and loving this sport like they do football or they do basketball or some of the other major sports that are out there, it's obviously going to go away, right? Or like you said, become one of those secondary sports. I think TV deals have quite a bit to do with that as well. So hopefully they can get some of that stuff figured out. But
they will, not soon enough, but they will. And then you're right, that's an important piece to it as well. And they will get that figured out. That's not just baseball right now. That's basketball and hockey as well, and streaming issues. And it's above my head, but it's not right. And I think the one other piece I'll just say quickly is that baseball, and they're getting a little better. Baseball has to find a way to be more open, the way in terms of access, the way NFL is, certainly the way NHL and NBA are. The more you could bring fans behind the scenes, the more you could show personalities, the more you could let them in, the more people are going to watch. People love personality. People love that peek behind the scenes. And so, mic up more players, take people places that they don't go, and make it a viewing experience for people. And when they get that viewing experience, they get to know the players more. They want to come to the games more. This should not be rocket science, but baseball has always been so protective of its history and the way it's done things. Again, we live in that social media world. There's a reason why, my kids know about something before I know it, or when I go to tell them, hey, did you? Oh yeah, I already saw it. They're getting it instantly, and you got to give them something good.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I love how you brought it back to the social media there as well. I appreciate that. Now, Joel, every superhero out there has a defining moment. What do you think yours is when it comes to your life and career?
Oh my gosh. There's so many, because I have no idea. I mean, I have an idea, but I'm blown away that I've been doing this for 29 years. And if you told me when I got out of college 29 years ago that I would, still be doing this in 2023, I'd say, oh my gosh, I guess it all worked out, and it has. But I think I'll just go with, and I share this with some audiences to the beginning, because if it doesn't happen, I don't get in. But in 1994, out of college, I think the first 20 something television stations I applied to, and this is back in the day and age where you couldn't send in a resume tape via a YouTube link. You had to send it in the mail, a physical tape, and email had just started, and websites didn't really exist yet, or they were just starting, and there was no social media or LinkedIn. And I think I was like 0 for 25. And I don't really even remember if somebody gave me this advice. I think that they did, to pick up the phone and start calling TV stations. And I'd call all these small TV stations around the country, and I would ask to speak to the news director. And I probably had like a script written out on a piece of paper so that I didn't, nervously mess anything up. And I would tell that person that I know you don't have an opening right now, but I'm passing through town in 2 weeks. I'm passing through town next week, on Wednesday and Thursday. Would you be around? And if so, could I come and hand deliver a tape and meet you? And they all said yes. And I wasn't going to any of those cities, but as soon as they said yes, I, hopped in my car and took the one suit coat that I owned, and, hung it up and drove across the country. And that opened all the doors. Suddenly the first job opportunity came, and then 2, 3, 4 more came. And so I think, to me, that's the defining moment, because if it doesn't happen and I don't take that extra step, I have no idea what I'm doing today, but it's not this. And it started small, but then it started to build and build and build. And along the way, I built all these relationships and contacts that suddenly maybe they're moving elsewhere. So to me, that was the defining moment in terms of the career, because nothing else happens without that.
I love that, and having that hustle to go get it. I mean, I think that's something that social media has taken away from the generation that's coming up now, right?
Yeah.
Everything is instant.
And I would just real quick follow up by saying, at some point a few years ago, I was telling that story, and somebody said to me, well, nowadays we have LinkedIn. And I said, you're right. So does everybody else. Mm-hmm. So what makes you different? Okay, it's easier now to get a hold of people for everyone. So how are you going to stand out? And that's the question I ask people all the time. What makes you different? And you can't say you're better than everybody else, because if you're going to say that, you better have Michael Jordan type of abilities, right? You better have Bob Costas type of abilities. You better have fill in the blank. You better be that outlier. Most of us are not. So let's just say that if we're good, we're in a group with a lot of good people. What moves you to the top of the line? What says that in those 25 rejections that I got, that they ever even looked at my resume tape? Because if it wasn't on the top of the stack, I had no chance. And even if it was on the top of the stack, did I look that much different than everybody else that was green and coming out of school? But once they knew me, then I had a chance.
Absolutely. And seeing that authenticity, right, I'm sure probably helped out quite a bit to loop that back as well. So I love that. That's a great story, man. That is fantastic. Kind of reminds me of when everybody started like typing letters, right? Everybody went from like handwriting out letters to
Mhm.
like, then we're typing. They're like, oh man, they typed me a letter. This is really special. And then everybody started doing that, right? And then we went back to handwriting, right? Oh man, they really took the time to handwrite that letter, And then everybody started doing that again, right? So yeah, how do you stand out? How do you make yourself different? That's huge. One of the ways that we do that is who we are, right? Through our attributes. So what are the attributes that you feel really define what a hero is?
I think one of them I just mentioned before. I mean, beyond the authenticity is doing what you say you're going to do, being where you
Yeah.
say you're going to be, and I just think having people's interests. Um, my broadcast teammate Rex Hudler, as much as we love to give him grief on everything, as much as he warrants grief on everything, his heart is so huge and so genuine that it's superhero level. He wants to make someone's day, everyone's day, all day
Yeah.
long. And I think that's it right there, right? Just doing right by people. And you don't have to have the most athletic ability. You don't have to save someone's life. All of that is great. But can you just make people's lives a little better around you every single day, whether that's through your work, through your actions, or whatever it is? So I think that's what it is for me.
That's huge. That's huge. Absolutely. I think your whole broadcast team, Jeff Montgomery included, right? Phenomenal at all those things and showing that realism. All right, last question for you, Joel. This is probably the hardest one. This is the one that trips up everybody. If you had to compare yourself to any superhero that is out there, who would that be? And tell us a couple reasons why.
Um, Superhero.
Yep.
I was thinking about this in advance because I've always been like the casual, like I saw the intro and all the like such a cool intro. And I was never like the diehard superhero guy. I mean, I watched it all growing up, watch it with the kids now. I think I'm just gonna go old school Superman because I was thinking just like about some of the superpowers and what everybody does. I feel like I can relate enough. Um, we all have our kryptonite or more than one versions of kryptonite. None of us are bulletproof. He might have been bulletproof, but he wasn't kryptonite proof, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know. Like I feel like I'm someone that has a, a big perspective, 35,000 foot outlook, if you will, sees the big picture. I'm a big picture guy, and I feel like flying around would enable me to do that. So there are a lot of good ones. I thought maybe Spider-Man would be good. That'd be a lot of fun, but I feel like I'm clumsy enough that I'd like crash through a window accidentally or something like that. So I think I'm going Superman. That was he was my favorite growing up anyway.
I love it. I love it. Being able to get up there and really get that bird's eye view of what's going on. That's perfect. Well, Joel, thank you so much for coming on the show, man. It's been an absolute pleasure to be able to spend some time with you. How can people get a hold of you? How can they book you for a show? How can they keep up with what you're doing?
Well, all the social media stuff, of course. If anyone is, and certainly listen to the podcast Rounding the Bases. If anyone's interested in terms of the speaking, really Joel Goldberg Media is the best way. JoelGoldbergMedia.com, or we are easily, I say me and my team, reached at info@JoelGoldbergMedia.com, and we're happy, of course, to talk to anybody locally or around the country.
Beautiful, beautiful. So definitely get out there. I know there's a ton of people that watch this show that hire speakers on a regular basis. So we've got one of our local heroes right here that is willing to come out and do that. So Joel, thank you again, man, for coming on the show. You're absolutely awesome, and I hope that the season is longer than it should be, but I know it's not gonna be for you. So I hope you get some good R&R after the season ends here in a couple months.
Yeah, the speaking really picks up in October. Got some in September too, but it really picks up locally and nationally. And at this point, I'm going to say I do not want the season to be any longer because they've been eliminated from the playoffs. So if it's any longer, it means that
Oh,
we've
it's
got some kind
official.
of a
Okay.
rain out or a makeup or something like that. And so I love it. I'm fired up about the last month, and then when it's done, clean break. It's time to be done.
Get out of there. Absolutely. Well, thank you again. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, and have an amazing day.
Hey, are we still live? Hey guys, we're still live. Hey guys, this is Kevin Kwok, founder of J29 Creative Group. So who are we? We're a marketing agency here in Kansas City. We're all about a holistic approach to marketing that builds your brand and nurtures online community. But to be honest with you, you guys don't care.